I'm at my favorite off the side of the road hot spring here in Idaho, a couple hours from where I live. And it's an awesome place to drop into speaking with you, to feel the groundedness of this place and the beauty of it. So I want to invite you into that state, wherever you are. And this is like my fifth take of this, and I wasn't going to do another, and then I was thinking about why it's challenging to speak to a camera and say all these things. Like, what's the difference between that and facilitation, which is what I want to talk to you about. And I'm like, oh, what a perfect way in. The difference between speaking to you here and facilitation is, in facilitation, there's constant feedback. There's this larger organism of the connection between us. And within that, I can be listening. And listening with my ears, also listening just with my overall awareness, my energetic awareness, and then my visual awareness, seeing how are people moving, what are they looking at, how are they breathing. All these little cues that make it possible for me to check in with how I'm being received. And on this video, I only have the ability to kind of glance at myself on the screen here, and that's it. So that's a huge difference. And I think that speaks to what the difference is between just like speaking or teaching and facilitating. In facilitating, we're working with this organism that is the group. And it doesn't need to be in a particular place of leadership either. We can facilitate in line at the grocery store. We can facilitate in any situation where we're in interaction. Yesterday I was here, and on some level I was facilitating with the forest. I was facilitating myself with the forest, trying to check in with the beings of the forest, which isn't something that has come all that naturally to me. It's taken practice to learn to recognize how alive this place is. And after a little bit of practice, I was like, oh, right, I feel it. Like, there's the forest being. I asked the forest being if it would be okay for me to do this video here, and felt offered support. So we're always able to navigate this relationship with the aliveness of who we're with, and that includes ourselves. And so BraveSpace, the BraveSpace Focus group, is a group where we're going to break this down, and we're going to build it up and learn it better for ourselves. And we're going to do it through the principles of BraveSpace that have essentially given themselves to me over many years, right? I've thought them up, I've done all this analytic work, but really they're kind of using me as more than I them, because I see ideas as living beings. And so these ideas have, they don't have bodies, but they do have energy fields. And when we collaborate with our ideas, the ideas that are given to us, that are in the field around us, with that kind of respect, that they're their own subjects. And we even talk about this in schooling, right? Social studies is a subject that I took in, 4th through 12th grade. It's a subject, it's a set of ideas, it's a way of perceiving. And so we can treat BraveSpace, this space where we can take the risk of being vulnerable, where we set up those conditions, understanding that it's never exactly safe to be vulnerable, so we need conditions. We can treat that as a subject, as a being, and then entrain with it, learn with it, experiment from that state of consciousness. And so we stay fully ourselves, right? We're still our whole selves in that group space. And we're also part of the communal being. We're also part of this living, breathing dynamic that as facilitators we can feel into. There's a number of systems, somatic systems that are my tool set and that I'll be sharing. And I imagine you come in with some others and you'll be sharing them too. And somatics is this field, this way of exploring this subject that's connecting movement and awareness. And we can move even just our attention. We can move our breath. We can move through the vibration of our voice. And then, of course, we can move our whole bodies. And that's a favorite of mine. And so contact improvisation, ecstatic dance are pretty forward right now in our culture. They're some of the ways that I see somatic knowing coming forward with improvisation, with the idea that we don't need to know what's happening next. Instead, we tune in. And so that's somatics to me at its best. I love yoga, Pilates, forms that have more specific form, where the form takes, warrior two and down dog, or, there's lots of names for different Pilates exercises, things like that. These systems are also deeply somatic because we move in specific ways and then notice the experience. But we can actually do them in a somatic way, or we can do them without really giving credence to the sensing, to the dropping into the depth of it. And I see more and more yoga teachers who are really asking, like, what happens if we don't know what's going to happen next? What happens if we drink in the form as it is? And then we get to go between and ask the question, treat it as research. And that's fundamental as a somatic principle. It cuts across these somatic methods. It's pan-somatic when we do that. So the 10 principles of BraveSpace are these pan-somatic principles. They cut across the various techniques and ask, what is the essence of movement and awareness? What is the essence of this way of knowing? And then how can we use those to take the risk of being vulnerable, to create the conditions where we can trust ourselves, trust our bodies, trust each other, trust that this is a living world, a living, breathing dynamic that we're in the midst of. And so that's what the principles offer. And so the focus of our group will be investigating the principles and bringing those into how we facilitate for ourselves and for others. There's 2 more dynamics I want to speak to, and I'll try to do so quickly. But I think they're really important because I think they differentiate BraveSpace from some other somatic facilitator perspectives. And they are spirit and eros. And to me, these are interwoven and unavoidable when we come to the bodies. So it seems so important to me to be inclusive of these elements. And my perspective on spirit is that it comes through each of us sovereignly in our wholeness. It comes through as this connection to the divine, and the divine means a different thing to every one of us. But there's this sense that if I really soften into what is, the divine is right here inside me. There's this connection to all that is, and that I can listen to it. And so my favorite way to do that, the way that feels most true for me, you can read on the site here some of that story. The thing that feels most true for me is that my body knows and I can trust it. There's a deep pleasure in integrity. And I can read my body like a spiritual text. I grew up Jewish, So the Torah was the spiritual text. And then I also grew up scientific. My mom's a scientist, and I grew up in that worldview, probably even more than Judaism, of we test the objective world. We run tests and see what feedback comes back. Sounds a lot like facilitation, right? So somatics is this scientific sort of way on the inside, and listening and running tests about what really feels like the deepest integrity and truth. So it's a mixture. It's both and of what's in some of these religious perspectives of really what's a miracle, understanding that there are constant miracles, and that we run tests and don't believe everything that you feel. I don't believe everything I feel. I just kind of put it on the bulletin board of understanding, and I check in and I keep running experiments with my inner perception and the movement of my attention and body. So that's the spirit element. And so much happens when we bring in touch, right? And we bring in the group field, because then it's not just my connection to the divine, it's yours and ours. They're all interrelated, and they're not the same. The other piece I want to speak to is Eros. And Eros is not just our sexuality, it is inclusive of it. And as Mark Gaffney, he's a rabbi who speaks beautifully about this, talks about, he says that the sexual models the erotic, but it doesn't encompass the erotic. So sexuality is an unavoidable truth of our bodies. We are sexual beings, and there's longing and desire, and there's these incredible things that happen when we start relating. They can also be very scary. They can hijack our nervous systems and our ways of interacting. And we can intentionally or unintentionally project that Eros on each other. And so there's a lot to navigate there. And I want to do that consciously, because it's unavoidable when we start diving into our bodies and interaction. And then this layer that Eros isn't just our sexuality is the way to unpack that so it doesn't hijack us. Because there's Eros in everything. There's a making love available in everything. I'm not always there, but I feel like having spoken that, I'm one layer more there here with you, of being able to feel you and feel where you're at and feel my aliveness and feel my longing. I have this deep longing to connect with you and to invite you into the BraveSpace Focus group. I know that a number of you watching this are the right people to be there, and I long to be there with you. And so it's that erotic meeting that brings me into my full aliveness here with you. And that has nothing directly anyway to do with my sexuality. It has to do with my vitality. It has to do with my longing. And it has to do with the way that we come together to create something bigger than either of us. So that's a perspective on Eros. Another piece of Eros is the being on the inside of the inside, as Gaffney talks about it. That like time disappears. I'm looking here, I've been speaking with you for 14 minutes, which is a lot longer than I intended. And maybe you're still here with me. If you heard this, you are. So that is where like time shifts because we're in this state. And that's an erotic conversation, as he talks about it. So it's very alive for me in a somatic way of being together, in creating brave space together. Please look at that application. Please apply. Click the button. It'll take you probably 15 minutes and asks for a little bit of vulnerability. Here I go with, I know that I'm in a different state of consciousness when I start saying so it's about time to let it go. And thank you so much, and I'll hope to speak with you soon. Apply, and then we'll set up a phone call. Much love. Bye.